Teenage Nightmares. Original short horror stories. Hi, my name is Carrie, and this is the chilling story of my nightmare used car purchase. I was 18 at the time, eager and excited to finally own my first car. I was looking for something affordable yet reliable, so I started searching for a used Toyota Corolla. I did my research, and everyone seemed to agree that a Corolla was the ideal first car. Naturally, I couldn't wait to get one of my own. One of my dad's friends suggested checking Craigslist, so I started my search there, and I found plenty of used Corollas listed. The only issue was that they were either out of my budget or required too many repairs. After days of searching and finding nothing within my price range, I was on the verge of giving up or settling for something else. Then, a red 2003 Corolla popped up. It had decent mileage and was priced perfectly within my budget. I called the number in the listing, but no one picked up. Instead, I got a text message asking if I was inquiring about the Corolla. I replied right away, letting them know I was very interested and would be coming by taxi. I mentioned that I was ready to make the purchase. They sent me an address without any further details. I called for a cab and headed straight there. In hindsight, it was probably foolish to go alone to a cash deal like that. But at the time, I didn't care. I was focused on the great deal and my desperate need for a car. It would be a 1-hour drive. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem, but it was already 3 p.m., and with daylight savings, the sun would be setting in just a few hours. So I would be coming home after dark. I wasn't scared at the time, but if I'd known what was about to unfold that night, I would have turned around and gone straight home. I finally arrived, and just before I got out, the cab driver asked if I wanted him to wait around. He mentioned the area was a bit sketchy. I thanked him but said no, explaining that I was there to buy a car and would be driving myself home. He gave me a smile and told me to be careful before driving away. I walked up to the house and sent a text to the owner, informing them that I had arrived. I could see the Corolla through the tiny window of the garage. As I tried to get a better look, the garage door suddenly began to open. It startled me, causing me to jump back a bit. The door fully opened, revealing an elderly couple standing there. They barely said a word and simply handed me the keys. I asked if I could take it for a test drive, and they nodded in agreement. I drove it around the block, and it ran smoothly. Plus, the heater worked perfectly, which was important to me, especially since the winters could be harsh. I drove back excited and ready to make an offer. I parked the car out front and walked up to the couple in the garage. I smiled and waved before asking if the price was firm. They exchanged a glance, then turned to me and said I could have it. No cost at all. I asked if they were serious, and they assured me they were. They explained that they hadn't mentioned it was free in the ad because they figured people would think it was a scam. I jokingly inquired about the catch. They paused briefly before revealing that the car had once belonged to their late son. They explained that he had been involved in witchcraft, and they believed the car was now haunted. The old man's voice dropped slightly as he continued, his hands trembling as they rested on his lap. Since we inherited it after his death, strange things have been happening around the house. His wife, standing beside him, nodded silently, her eyes wide but distant, as though lost in memories she wished she could forget. I saw something unholy in the rearview mirror once, he said, his eyes darting nervously toward the car. Something sitting behind me. It wasn't human. The words hung in the air, thick and chilling, and the flickering of a nearby light made the shadows around us seem to stretch, as if they were alive and listening. I couldn't tell if it was the dim light or the man's unsettling words, but suddenly, the car sitting innocently on the driveway didn't look quite so welcoming anymore. But I quickly brushed it off, reminding myself that I needed a car. Plus, I was a skeptic. I figured these elderly people were likely just grieving the loss of their son and clinging to whatever they could to make sense of it. I thanked them for the warning and asked once more if they were absolutely sure they didn't want any money for it. The old man chuckled softly, his eyes flickering with something unsettling, and said, "It would be wicked of me to charge you for a curse." I laughed nervously, took the keys and paperwork, and drove off, feeling their eyes on me as they watched and smiled. I pulled into a nearby gas station to fill up and grab some snacks for the hour-long drive back. By the time I reached the counter, I had forgotten which pump I was at, so I peeked out the window to check. By this time, it was already dark, but I could clearly see someone sitting in my car. I left everything on the counter and rushed outside, ready to confront whoever was trying to steal my car. But when I stepped into the empty lot of the Erie station, my car was completely empty. Even though I was a staunch skeptic, I couldn't help but recall the elderly couple's words. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just spooked by what they had said. I went back into the station, apologizing for running out so abruptly. I paid for my snacks and filled up the car. I got back on the road, heading toward home. About 20 minutes into the drive, the radio suddenly turned on. A CD was playing, filling the car with eerie chanting music. I quickly hit eject and tossed the CD out the window as fast as I could. But after a few moments, I could still hear the chanting, and then it shifted into a low, guttural growl. At this point, my heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel it sinking into my stomach. I couldn't come up with a logical explanation for why I was hearing that sound. Then, I replayed what the old man had said about what he had seen. I knew it had to be the unholy thing in the back seat, but I couldn't look. My heart wouldn't let me. But that didn't stop it from revealing itself. Eventually, it revealed itself in the passenger seat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was exactly as the old man had described, unholy. Before I could say or do anything, it vanished. The remaining 30 minutes of the drive were agonizing. I waited for him to show up with every passing second. I eventually made it home, but seeing my house did little to bring the comfort I thought it would. The familiar sight of my front door felt distant, almost cold, as if something was lurking just beyond it. There's no way it's inside my house, I told myself, trying to convince myself that it couldn't have followed me. But the gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach told me otherwise. Suddenly, the elderly couple's warning took on a more serious, life-threatening tone. Their words echoed in my mind, heavy with a truth I wasn't ready to face. Was there a demon in this car? And more importantly, was it going to hurt me? The thought made my skin crawl, my pulse racing as I stood frozen in the driveway, unable to shake the feeling that something was watching me. I eventually shook it off and walked into my house, trying to push the fear to the back of my mind. I was greeted by my mom, who had just gotten home from work, her tired smile offering a sense of normalcy I desperately needed. "Hi, Carrie," she said, setting down her bag. "How did the car thing go?" I could see how tired my mom was after working a 12-hour shift as a nurse, so I just told her it went great, not wanting to add any more stress to her day. We had dinner, and the night felt pretty normal, just like any other. But everything changed once I was alone in my room. It was around 11:30, and I was up alone, playing some games before bed to try to ease my mind. The distractions helped, but the lingering unease wouldn't let go. Then, the closet door began to rattle. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, but the sound grew louder, more frantic, like something trying to get out. Damn it, I should have listened to those old people, I thought to myself, a cold sweat creeping down my spine as I stared at the closet door, unwilling to move. The door eventually creaked open, and there it was, the same unholy being from the car. It stood there, twisted and unnatural, its eyes locked onto mine with a gaze that pierced through me like ice. It slowly crept toward me, its bones creaking and popping with every agonizing movement. Each step was deliberate, as if it reveled in the fear it was causing, and the sound echoed through the room like a death knell. I knew, deep down inside, that I had to run. I had to break this trance, shake off the paralysis that held me in place. I knew that if I could get to my mom's room, I would be safe. She was religious, deeply devout, and her faith in God always made me feel like nothing could touch us. But the distance between her room and mine felt like miles. But that thing was getting closer, its slow, deliberate movements sending waves of panic through me. I knew it was now or never. I had to make a break for it before it was too late. I ran, and so did it, its pursuit relentless. Luckily, my mom was right outside her door. I bolted for her, but as soon as she saw what was chasing me, she screamed. Her face drained of color as she saw the creature too. We quickly barricaded ourselves in her room, my heart pounding in my chest as we pushed furniture against the door. The thing outside banged on it aggressively, its strikes heavy and merciless, each one shaking the walls as if it were trying to break through with sheer force. My mom, her voice trembling with fear, asked what was going on. I told her everything: the car, the creature, the warnings from the elderly couple. As I spoke, I could see the disbelief in her eyes slowly turn to fear, her hands shaking as she clutched the Bible tightly to her chest. My mother began to read from the Bible, her voice steady but filled with desperation. She read for hours, her words weaving a shield of faith around us. But outside the door, the thing never stopped. It made unholy sounds, growls, snarls, and whispers that crawled under my skin, louder with each passing minute. The torment lasted until sunrise, the creature's sounds growing more frantic as the light of day began to break through. Then, just as abruptly as it had started, everything fell silent. We didn't hesitate. We called a tow yard and had the car crushed, praying that whatever evil had clung to it would finally be destroyed. And that was the end of it. For us at least. I don't know if it ever bothered anyone else. Maybe the curse was broken, or maybe it just moved on to find its next victim. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that something would always be lurking just out of sight. Be careful of the used items you bring into your life. You never know what might be attached to them, waiting to follow you home.